Well, good evening, Facebook fans and YouTubers. How you doing this afternoon on this beautiful, it's a beautiful Thursday, November 18, 2021. It's about 78 degrees where I'm at, and I'm in the outskirts of Atlanta. So hello, everyone, and thank you for joining. Well, let's get right into it. We have a solid hour, and my guests have to get off at 4 o'clock. So, ladies and gentlemen, please get your questions in early. The first person I'm going to tell you a little bit about them, and then they're going to tell you about themselves. And my first guest is the illustrious Michelle Duster, and she is a soror, I like to call, with the pink and green. Michelle Duster is an author, speaker, professor, public historian, and champion of racial and gender equality. She has written and edited over 16 books, and it's probably more than that because this is probably outdated. Her most recent release, which was in January 26th of this year, is Ida B. the Queen, and I have a copy of it. It's an extraordinary book. She's also written others, and she is the great-great-granddaughter of the illustrious Ida B. Wells. My next guest you've probably seen as well. They've both been on my show before. I love her. Her name is Miss Lillian Bundles. We started out with the League, and then we did some other things with the Women's Series. Lillian Bundles is the author of On Her Own Ground. It's the life and times of Matter C.J. Walker, the 2001 New York bestseller. She's written a whole lot of books as well. I'm really going to get out the way because I have been trying to get these ladies together for the first time. For those who really know me, I'm a historian, I'm a researcher, and I'm really honored, extremely honored and pleased to have both these women at the same time. So welcome, Michelle Duster, and welcome, Lillian Bundles, to the Bella Biz Unplugged. How are you ladies doing today?
Great to be with you.
Thank you so much for having me. Now I'm looking at a count, we have about 615 people watching right now, and I'm going to assume everyone doesn't know who Michelle Duster and Lillian Bundles are individually, and who are you tied to? So, ladies, please have at it. Tell us a little bit more about yourselves.
Well, as you said, my name is Michelle Duster. I am, as all you said, I'm a professor, an author, a public historian. I've written quite a few books, written and edited quite a few books. It's 16 now, and 2 are coming out in the next couple of years, so I can't stop writing. I've edited 2 books that include the original writing of my great-grandmother, Ida B. Wells. Ida B. Wells was my grandmother's mother, so she was my great-grandmother. And as you said, Linda, I'm also a soror, aka as well as Amelia. We all 3 have that in common. I have done a lot of work to help people remember and celebrate the work and the legacy of my great-grandmother, Ida B. Wells. I think it's important for her to get the recognition that she deserves, as well as for this country to tell its true story, its true history, and she is a huge part of that history. She was very well known as a pioneering journalist, a data journalist, born into slavery in 1862. And so she grew up during Reconstruction and lived through the domestic terrorism of lynching, and she documented it and chronicled it. And so for today's audience can actually see names, dates, locations, and excuses that were given for extrajudicial killing of African Americans during post-Reconstruction. So that is a real reality of our country's history, and luckily my great-grandmother documented it so that it's not fiction. It's not something that it should be erased. And so I am doing what I can to make sure that like I said, my great-grandmother is remembered, but also the work that she chronicled is not forgotten as well. And she was also involved in the suffrage movement. She was one of the founders of the NAACP. She founded a couple of other organizations. She ultimately settled in Chicago, where she founded the Negro Fellowship League, which was gave housing to Southern migrants. So during the course of her 68 years on this planet, she was involved in an enormous amount of organizations and activities, and she actually did interact with and collaborate with Madam C.J. Walker. And so it is amazing. Here we are, 90 years after my great grandmother died. I am friends with Aloysia Bundles, who was friends with her ancestors. So, and we are doing so many of similar kind of work that it's just amazing to me that we've been able to make this connection and have collaborated ourselves.
So thank you, Michelle. And it is really, one of the joys of life to be able to interact with Michelle and to know that we have become friends. I mean, she is always full of energy and ideas. And Michelle and I met because she engineered a panel that we were on together with a descendant of Frederick Douglass and Booker T. Washington. So we are it's kind of a small group of descendants who try to work collaboratively together. And I first learned about the relationship between Madam Walker and Ida B. Wells in a book, Crusade for Justice, the autobiography of Ida B. Wells that Michelle's grandmother had edited. And I was delighted to find out that the two women had known each other and that they were active together. But for my personal life, I was a longtime journalist. Michelle and I both have ended up in communications in one form or another and writing books. But I was a network television news producer and executive for 30 years, about half the time with NBC, about half the time with ABC. And I started writing and researching Madam Walker's life when I was in graduate school in journalism at Columbia. But I had grown up in a household where my mother was vice president of the Madam C.J. Walker Manufacturing Company. So I knew something about the story, but it was not the centerpiece of my life growing up. We did not sit around the dinner table talking about Madam Walker. But when I was in graduate school, Phyllis Garland, who was the only Black woman on the faculty at Columbia, recognized my name, Alelia, which is Madam Walker's daughter's name. And fortunately for me, she insisted that I write my master's paper about Madam Walker. And that began a journey of really uncovering who she was beyond the sort of paragraph of inaccurate information about her. Because what most people knew about Madam Walker 40 years ago, before I started writing about her, they said, oh, she's the woman who invented the hot comb. And that's not true. So it was digging and finding out the information about her, developing a business, employing tens of thousands of women, being involved in philanthropy and social activism, political activism, developing a business, being a genius in marketing, and really being a pioneer of the modern hair care industry. But as I did this research, it was interesting to know that she developed a business. That was huge for a time when most Black women who worked were either sharecroppers, maids, laundresses, and other domestic work, not able to, before women had the right to vote, not really able to participate in the economy in a way that empowered them. But Madam Walker helped to develop a business that allowed them to do that. But the connection, the activism is really what engaged me. And again, finding this connection between Ida B. Wells and Madam Walker in Crusade for Justice made me want to know more about that, because that was the piece that was left out of this sort of inaccurate description of who she was. And what I discovered, and Michelle and I have talked about this often, is that as Madam Walker became more prosperous and as she moved from Indianapolis to New York, she became very involved in the NAACP. And while Ida B. Wells was in the trenches and going to East St. Louis to do the reporting on what had happened after the massacre there in 1917, Madam Walker was using her sales agents at her convention in 1917 to talk about the injustices against African Americans, so that at the end of that convention where she said to her agents, "Your first duty is to humanity. I want others to look at us and realize that we care not just about ourselves, but about others." The women sent a telegram to President Woodrow Wilson urging him to support legislation to make lynching a federal crime. So Ida is in the trenches, and Madam Walker is working in another way, in a sense, lobbying. And she went to the White House with a group of Harlem leaders with a petition. Wilson wouldn't see them, but these two women, powerful in their own right, working in concert with each other, which, made me, want to tell Madam Walker's story much more than if only, I mean, not that it wasn't a big deal that she developed a business, but I love the many dimensions.
That's awesome. It's funny. I think I told the story, Michelle, when A'Lelia was on the second time and we interviewed and we spotlighted A'Lelia, when I told her, you're right about deja vu, because I was in the 7th grade. So I was 13 years old. And I wrote a paper on Madam C.J. Walker. And I wanted to become in the hair business, but it didn't agree with me, A'Lelia. So that was not my anointing, needless to say. And Michelle, you're Ida B. Wells is my hero. I mean, I work in the league. I'm very involved in the league. And I know she was very much in the trenches back there before the league was established in 1920. So I thank you both. So let's talk about the collaboration and the work that you ladies are doing. Let's hear some about that. Michelle?
I mean, well, A'Lelia and I, like she said, we participated in a panel together, and I think that was 2009.
Yeah, a while ago.
And when I didn't know A'Lelia, actually, I have to say this. We were both featured in Ebony magazine in 2008 in a story that was about descendants. So before that article, I had never met anybody else who was a direct descendant of a historic figure. I do have some friends who are children of, people who are public figures, but I had never met another descendant who was like me, where I've never met Ida. She died 32 years before I was born. So it's just a different kind of experience being related to somebody that you've never met before versus being a child who you have, you see every day. And so when I saw the article in Ebony magazine, and I saw A'Lelia and several other people in there, I was like, oh wow, there's some other people out here who have this similar experience. And I was like, I hope I can get a chance to meet these people. And so when I was on the panel with A'Lelia, I was like so happy, to meet her, and I felt like we could bond. In addition to that, when I read A'Lelia's bio, I was amazed at how much we had in common. Mm-hmm. In addition to us being descendants of, women who are well known, we both went to Ivy League schools. We both are the only girls with 2 brothers. We both are AKAs. We both worked in the communications field. And I was like, she's my twin. It was just so amazing to meet her. What I felt like even before I met her in person, that we had so much in common. So as over these years, we have developed a friendship because we're living these sort of parallel lives. And we kind of have so much in common that very few other people can really share, because it is such a unique experience to be in this situation. I mean, even for me, when it comes to other family members, I'm a woman, and so my brothers can't even completely relate, because I do think that there's some differences when it comes to how men and women are still sort of treated and regarded, in our society. So, so that's all the background of, how excited I was to meet A'Lelia, and she was so friendly too, because you read her bio and I'm like, oh my God, I don't know, it's like kind of intimidating.
Exactly. So, when she first came on board, she came on, if you remember, Lilia, we had her spotlight with the league doing what we call our 100th anniversary. And right. So same thing, Michelle. I'm like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. She's so down to earth. But I want to talk about legacy, because I framed and tactic this particular discussion, Legacy 2021. It's been an awful lot of people just with COVID and just prior to COVID, talking about what they're doing in their lives and what kind of legacy, meaning what are they leaving behind, right? Like really, we often discuss, I have a formal group of women and we talk about things that we do. We don't think about them, we just do them, but we think about sometimes what will people say once we're gone? And so that comes out to be Legacy 2021. So ladies, A'Lelia, let's dive in a little bit and talk about that.
Well, I was gonna actually, Michelle is working on something really key now. So I'll talk a bit about since I'll talk a bit about sort of how I think the responsibility that we both feel
Yeah,
to tell the story. And then I want to hear Michelle's thoughts because she's right, like again in the trenches
yeah,
at the moment. So
In the foxhole.
for me, there is a responsibility. So I will say, when I was growing up, absolutely the last thing I thought I would be doing is telling Madam Walker's story. My mom worked at the Walker Company. My dad was also in the hair care business, but my passion was writing, and I followed that path and that dream, and that passion to become a journalist and to do that. But that seed was planted early in my life when I began to discover things about the Walker women, and then when I was in graduate school, and Phil Garland insisted that I write about Madam Walker. But as I began to tell the story, I realized the power of the story. I realized the ability to inspire others. And so I wrote a young adult book that came out in 91. It was the first biography of Madam Walker, believe it or not. But we know that there were very few books being written about, now or at least being published. They were being written, but being published about or by Black women. So that was sort of step one. And then we worked on a stamp for Madam Walker that essentially was petitions on my dining room table before the internet. And that we were able to get a stamp in 98. And then bit by bit, and there would be luncheons or awards named after Madam Walker, and I was always happy to participate in that way. And there were, people who, sort of didn't really get who Madam Walker was, who wanted to use her name in ways that I didn't like. I know Michelle is raising her eyebrows here because we've had the same experience, because you want to be protective
right,
of the person's legacy, and people mean well and sometimes they don't do well.
right.
So, and then I wrote the other books, and there's there's a Madam Walker line of hair care products, which I'm so happy is part of the Sundial Brands family, the company that manufactures Shea Moisture and Nubian Heritage. And we're getting ready to launch a new line in January 2022. I can't tell you the details yet, but follow me at A'Lelia Bundles on Twitter and Instagram, and you'll find the details. But then, of course, the big thing that many people know about is the Netflix series. So
Yeah,
while I'm focused on Madam Walker Papers at Indiana Historical Society, the Madam Walker exhibit there, the two historic landmarks, the Madam Walker Legacy Center and Madam Walker's home, in Irvington, New York, Villa Lawaro, more people know about the Netflix series because Octavia Spencer was in that. Octavia Spencer was fabulous in that, but I will say that in this journey of telling Madam Walker's story, I have mixed feelings about it. My book, On Her Own Ground, was the nonfiction basis for the Netflix series, but the Netflix series I think, had many missed opportunities. I know it was very entertaining. Again, Octavia Spencer was great. Lots of people worked really hard on it. But the head writer and the showrunners, who were all Black women, had a very different approach and a very different concept that veered tremendously from the accurate history of Madam Walker's life. So just briefly, they wanted to focus on the conflict between two women.
right.
And I was hoping for Hidden Figures, but it got a little bit too close to Real Housewives of Atlanta.
That's
They
right.
introduced colorism that didn't really exist in that conflict between Madam Walker and Annie Malone. They diminished Annie Malone. And then they sort of introduced characters who weren't really there, with a little criminal element, which I thought was a bit stereotypical. They made Booker T. Washington into a misogynist, and he was a man of his times, but not the sort of cartoonish character. The boxing scenes I thought were just kind of tragically sad. And then they made up a character. They gave Alelia Walker a girlfriend who she didn't really have. So they
Ah,
created a lot of stories that I think were kind of Hollywood tropes and, touch points to create conflict. Overall, again, I will say Octavia Spencer, I thought, embodied Madam Walker's, tenacity, and showed that the struggle of a woman building a business. There were a lot of people who worked really hard on this, but I'm now just got to do a lot of reparative work, and
yeah,
I'm working on other projects.
that's good. That's good. I know we share that conversation together because it's about the facts, and we don't get the facts right all the time, do we, ladies? And I know, Michelle, we were talking about women telling their stories and how it can be misconstrued, and we try to tell the story correct, and it's very important to have that be sacred.
Well, yeah, I mean, my great grandmother, took that seriously, and she wrote her own autobiography. She wasn't able to publish it before she passed away, and luckily, my grandmother, who was Ida's youngest daughter out of 4 children, um, took it upon herself to make sure that the book was published, and it took her 40 years, 40 years, between the time that I guess she found the manuscript to the time that she was able to get it published. It's not like she was working on it 8 hours a day for 40 years in a row. I mean, she had 5 kids, so it just was a process. But in the intro of the autobiography, Ida herself mentions or alludes to, she doesn't say it directly, but she pretty much makes it clear that she felt if she didn't tell her own story, then her story would be lost. And that was 1928 that she felt that way, and she worked on it for 3 years, and then she passed away in 1931. But the fact that she knew that if she didn't take it upon herself to document her own life in her own words and give her own perspective, then she would be lost in history. And she had good reason, and she mentions in the book why she felt that would probably happen, because she had seen some publications during her time where she was not mentioned. And so she, and I think, during the course of my life, as I've gone through my own journey, like Alelia, it's not like I ever decided I'm going to make it my life mission to tell my great grandmother's story. In fact, I was very purposeful about not doing work that was similar to her, because I didn't want to be little Ida. People tend to not see you as an individual person if you're doing work that's so similar and so in alignment with somebody who has such a huge legacy. And so I was very purposeful about charting my own path, and I tried my best to go in a different direction. But I guess I just had this interest in telling stories. From a little kid, I was interested in photography. I was writing little stories. In grammar school and high school, I was on the school newspaper. But then when people started calling me Little Ida, then I'm like, no, I don't want to be a journalist. I don't want to be that. I want to be Michelle. And I come from Alelia and I have this one difference. I come from a huge family, and she comes from a smaller family. And so my experience growing up was there were so many other people in my family that were telling the story. I mean, first it was my grandmother, who edited and got Ida's book published. So she was off talking about Ida, and I was playing because I was a kid when the book was published. And then my father's generation, and there are 5 of them in his generation, they founded the Ida B. Wells Memorial Foundation. And so for about 20 years or so, they were the ones that were kind of doing, the carrying the legacy kind of thing. And the only thing I ever did was just go to events where Ida was being honored, but I never spoke. I never was the focus. I was just part of the audience, really. But then as my father's generation has gotten older and they're like, we're done, we're tired of this, so you do it. So it's kind of gotten thrust on me a little bit. And I think there are 15 of us great grandchildren now.
Wow.
And I think because of the path that I've taken career-wise, I think that's part of the reason why my father and my uncles were like, let Michelle do it, because I was a writer. I started off in advertising as a writer, and I worked in the film industry for a while. So, I mean, my career path was in the communication field. And so kind of one thing has led to another, which has taken me on this path versus it being my like, life plan. But I mean, my point is that my great grandmother decided to take her own story into her own hands, which has been extremely helpful, because everything that has come after that, and the book was published in 1970, has used her autobiography as the core. And then people have added in and filled in more information, because it is interesting what she either skimmed over or omitted.
It is. And
So
take a break, Michelle,
autobiographies are
for a
not
second. I don't know if you all can hear me, Michelle. I want to talk over you, but a question, actually, it's a comment, and it's really in sync to what you and Aaliyah are talking about. It's from Tracy Atkinson's out of Georgia, and she's saying, love that you ladies are carrying on the legacy in your own way and still honoring your family along the way. Hashtag legacy. And really, that's what it's all about. These are the conversations I've been having over the course of the last 2 years, particularly because of COVID. People are in, we already know the drill. People are working from home. There's a lot of devastation, and people are thinking on a more serious line to how we were back in the day. And, when I say back in the day, I'm talking about back in the back in the way day, when we told stories, and stories were told from generation to generation to generation. So, Aaliyah, why don't you add into what Michelle is talking about in terms of legacy and what you're doing?
Well, I mean, I think Michelle was on a roll about just what it really takes to tell these stories and how you share that with family members. I'm, as Michelle said, we do have very different family constellations. I'm sort of the last man standing with my family, but my brothers, who are both deceased, were very supportive of what I was doing. But I think we find ourselves called upon to say, what would Madam think, or what would Ida think? Well, we really don't know.
Right.
What we do know is what they did with their lives, and then we both were participating in conversations during the anniversary of the 19th Amendment. And Ida B, of course, had been in the trenches, and she'd been at the march in 1913. Madam Walker was not directly involved in the suffrage movement in the same way, but she had had sponsored and been the host for Black suffragists in Indianapolis, and had hosted them in her home and had been very supportive. She wasn't as involved because she was developing her business, but I think we both find that the themes that both Ida and Madam were focused on are still themes and things that we're fighting now. And I know in Michelle's case, this idea of erasure and this idea of us having our voice and telling our stories, she's still finding challenges. I will just say one thing, Michelle, before I turn it over to you, that sometimes I think we both find that that the stories are very inspiring, but they get appropriated by folks on the right. Where I will have there are a couple of Black conservatives who like to mention Madam Walker, and they sort of mention her within the context of, up by her bootstraps, and we don't need assistance. We don't need government help, but they don't want to talk about, and that's not the way she was. She definitely believed people needed assistance, and she tried to make that happen. But they don't want to talk about the fact that she was kind of Black Lives Matter 1.0,
Mm-hmm.
that she was definitely working in with, in concert with the anti-lynching movement. They don't want to hear that she voted for, that she didn't, well, she couldn't vote, but she supported a candidate who was a socialist. And, so they want to try to make her into something that she
She's
wasn't.
not.
They want to talk about her success without talking about her activism. But Michelle is really dealing with a particular situation right now.
Michelle, you want to share with the audience what that's all about?
Well, yeah, I will, but I also want to, before I get into that, talk about appropriation and sort of misrepresenting our ancestors. One situation, and I kind of ignore it because it's just there's only so much you can fight. But one thing I've seen, which is ludicrous, as far as people sort of misappropriating where my great grandmother really stood, is her stance on. She made a statement about every Negro family should, every Negro home should have a Winchester above the door, and so that some people in the NRA want to
Right.
have that as an example, right? And that is so far from what she was really talking about, because she was living during a time when the Klan was literally going around and dragging people out of their homes and burning them people alive. And so her attitude was like, we have to be able to fight back because there was no law. The people who were committing these crimes were many times part of the legal structure. So she was more talking about self-defense as far as being able to fight back against terrorism. And people just kind of take that completely out of context and like everybody should be, so that's, I just can't even fight that. I mean, I've tried to write back to, and I'm like, I don't have time for this. But as far as what I was saying, as far as like my great grandmother telling her own story and making sure she was not erased, right now in 2021, I have been involved in several public history projects that are focused on, I would not even call it erasure. It's more making sure that we're seen at all. Because it's not, you can't erase something that's not even there.
Right.
So I'm trying to make sure that not just my great grandmother, but other Black women, of other contemporaries of people who've come before or after her, are given the recognition that they deserve for what they contributed to the American story. And I have worked on a couple of public history projects. One was having a street renamed in honor of my great grandmother, Ida B. Wells Drive, which has ultimately happened. And right now, this minute, I've been working for the past 2 years now to have a suffrage mural created that would include a total of 10 Chicago area suffragists. So Ida is one of the 10, because the suffrage movement was about more than one woman. It was a multi-generational, thousands of women participated. And so, to me, this is collective action, and collective action is important to me to document, because I feel that there's a danger to when you, what do you call it? Iconography, or iconize one person as they're this, superhero, and not take into consideration all of the people who were around them, or the community that they were part of, or their contemporaries. I mean, they were part of a whole movement. And so that's one of the things that I'm trying to do, even with my great grandmother, is to not only help people understand who she was, but understand the times that she lived in,
Yeah.
and the other people that she interacted with, and how there was this collaborative community that worked together, because that's more realistic on how things get done. It's not just one person who takes on the world. It's a connective kind of situation. And so in trying to make sure that that women, and specifically Black women, are given credit. I initiated this idea of having the suffrage mural created because there's been nothing up to this point in Chicago and pretty much anywhere. Chicago is not unique in that way. And so it's two murals that are part of this one project. One has the suffragists, the other was going to have "I'm speaking," the text "I'm speaking," attributed to Kamala Harris, as a way to bridge, like, these women from our past are speaking, we have a voice, but also the fact that an African American Asian woman was elected vice president exactly 100 years after the 19th Amendment was passed.
That's right.
And so the idea was to have this, like, celebration of these women paved the way for Kamala Harris, and she is speaking, and we are speaking. And so that the text-based project has been obstructed by a white man who owns the parking lot that's adjacent to the real estate where this would go, and there's no way around it. We have to, it's just right next to each other, so we have to use his space in order to put the equipment that would go on this on the wall. And so it's, like, incredibly ironic that "I'm speaking" is being obstructed, and and so this idea of erasure, a Black woman who made history is being silenced by a white man. She's the second most powerful person in our country, but this person thinks he can, has the right and the opportunity to shut her down. The artist is a Black woman. So there are multiple layers of sort of kind of disrespecting Black women and making it extremely difficult for us to be seen and heard in a city, in a country where less than 7% of public artwork celebrates women, period. Right. And then you break it down to to Black women, it's a small fraction of that. So here we are trying to address this lack of representation, and we're running into this kind of a problem. And so I just think it's indicative of, when I think about, I've tried to think about this in analytical ways. My great-grandmother's printing press was destroyed in 1892 when she was speaking truth to power about the realities regarding lynching. It was destroyed by white men to silence her. And here we are in 2021, having a white man trying to silence us. And so to me, the struggle continues.
So I know you're going to get into a little, I have to say something. I'm just, and what comes to my mind, Michelle and Lee, what can we do today? Because there's always something that can be done. And we know everything is a process. I wanted to put that out there to 2,000 people are following us. So I want to put that out there to the universe. It's not a quick and dirty answer, but I just want everybody to think about that. What can we do to help support Michelle and her project? Lily, please continue.
Well, Michelle should answer that, because there are initiatives that she is working on, and there's some social media things. So I think we need to specifically address how people can raise their voices, not just for Chicago, but nationally, to support Michelle's effort.
Michelle, you have the floor, because people try to pull in there. The easiest way is to my website, MLD Writes, WRITES. I've posted the statement that is from our committee and the stakeholders in this project. I wrote an article for Ms. Magazine, which describes the dynamics that are going on. And I can put into the chat the website where people can donate money, because this obstruction has caused us, we've lost money. And so we need to raise money so that we can get this done. I'm going to stop you right there. Michelle, what you're going to do is give me the information, because I'm going to magnify this. I'm actually going to create a show behind this, because I want to ask you,
have you already set up petition? Has petitioning been done? Are you taking petitions?
We have not set up a petition yet. Where am I? Uh-oh. I am trying to get back. Oh, okay. We have not set up. This is very new. So we're okay. So I just put in the chat the website page where people can give donations. We need to raise quite a bit of money at this point in order to get this project done.
Yes. And so what I am going to do for my audience, because everyone's coming in and out, I'm going to set it up where they can go to my pages and inquire about it, Michelle, and donate as well, because we really need to do something about this. And I want to get with you because, you know, from the league's perspective and some of the things I know, I would like to engage and offer an opportunity. We can start a petition.
No, thank you.
Alelia?
Yeah. So, you know, I was going to, there are a number of things that I'm working on, and it's not as specific as the mural that Michelle is talking about. But as a person as a longtime journalist, as a person who has had the opportunity to participate on a number of nonprofit boards, and as somebody who really cares about history and who cares about voting rights, I just find myself really focused right now on voting rights and on the teaching of American history. You know, as Michelle said, this is about us telling the real story, telling the accurate story. And of course, with the political climate right now, there is a great deal of backlash. So after last summer, after George Floyd's murder, and after the groundswell of people who were becoming conscious of things that the three of us already knew, and the support for Black Lives Matter, when I would speak with, you know, corporations or with other groups, and people would say, well, do you think, you know, it's a reckoning, and, you know, aren't things going to be different? And I said, well, I don't know. You know, I've lived a long time. I think that it's really nice that there's a lot of desire to make things change, but the backlash always comes. And we see that the backlash has come with full force. And whether it's January 6th, or whether it's the trials that we're watching now, or whether it's the fake critical race theory argument. But what that says to me in terms of what people can do, you know, we have, you know, I think one of the things that the Democratic Party did not do, and the people realize this, is not really pay attention to local politics in school boards, and we all know this. This is not a new observation, but the battle is school boards right now. And we may not want to be in the school board, but I think we have to start showing up at the school board to fight back against this, because books that finally tell our story accurately are being taken off the shelves. I just spoke yesterday in Indianapolis at the Indiana Library Federation's annual conference with 400 librarians from all over the state. And they, right now in Indiana, the fight, unlike Virginia, where the fight was about, you know, critical race theory and teaching accurate history, they are right now facing people who show up at school board meetings, who are reading, you know, finding the most salacious paragraph they can find in young adult books that are helping kids deal with, you know, real issues. But they're dealing with that. But it will soon be the pushback on teaching accurate history. Today, you know, this week, this new 1619 book came out, and we know that there's been a great deal of backlash to talking about another way of looking at American history. So for me, the key things right now are how we make sure that we are giving as much energy as the crazy people on the right who are showing up and disrupting school board meetings, that we are giving as much energy to make sure that they are not able to erase the progress that has been made. And on the other front, it's voting rights and looking at voter suppression in all of these states. It is just unconscionable that I feel like as a person who's, who will be 70 next year, that the last 50 years, the progress that has been made on so many fronts that allowed me to have the career that I had, to have the opportunities that I had, both as a woman and as a Black person, that we are in danger of that tide being rolled back.
Mm.
Well, one of the things that I've been doing, I mean, one of the reasons I'm doing the work that I am, as far as public history, is to tell stories in different ways that don't rely on the school systems. Because I just feel that, in the environment that we're living in, we need to be a little creative. And obviously, I agree, we need to deal with school boards and we need to deal with curriculum, and all of these institutions where the majority of people learn. But also, I just think, we can be creative in putting out information in other ways, through public history, where it's in public spaces, even being creative as far as, TikTok or, some other kinds of mediums, that, not that I'm doing TikTok, but I'm just saying, like, I'm just throwing that out there. I've even seen some other people, create short videos, like 5-minute videos, 10-minute videos, that they're putting on YouTube, that are sort of mini documentaries that are telling these kind of histories. And so I just feel that we need to have a multi-pronged approach, to getting this information into the hands of people, that they sort of getting around sort of the traditional structures. And I mean, I am teaching now. I teach at Columbia College, and the whole, sort of feeling, that you're being surveilled or censored in the classroom is real. And, it's a big concern. And luckily, where I'm working is a little bit more sort of progressive and liberal than maybe some other institutions.
Okay.
But there is still this weird feeling within academia. And, so we're living in an interesting time, where we all have to kind of think about how to combat, this it really seems like a very concerted effort to marginalize and erase us.
So Michelle, I totally agree with you that a lot of this has to be done outside of school.
Mhm.
And I happen to have been at a dinner on Friday where Kaya Henderson, the former head of the schools in DC, was there. And she mentioned an organization that she's created called Reconstruction. And I had a typo the first time, but I just put this at reconstruction.us, where it is essentially freedom schools, but teaching Black history in ways that are outside the classroom, intentionally outside the control of school boards and classrooms. So it is really important to tell those stories, because on the right, things are very organized. There's something called CRT Central that is well funded, that has a portal for every single state, in this sense that you're talking about, surveilling, that says report to us if you know of an incident. So they are coming after the things that we believe in, and we have to push back.
Mhm.
Well, ladies, we have about less than 10 minutes. So I wanted to give you all ample time to just talk about projects again, where people can contact you at, and just whatever's on your heart that you want to share with the people out here as regards to legacy. And, everyone's doing something, but the focus in on being intentional about what you're doing and making sure that you are helping people and leaving a legacy behind is certainly the way to go. So, Michelle, I'll give you the floor first, and A'Lelia, I'll let you close it out.
Well, I mean, just to reiterate, I'm currently working on a mural project that celebrates 10 Chicago area suffragists and the political progress that we've made over the past 100 years, which has culminated so far in the election of Kamala Harris as vice president. So we're trying to celebrate that history, which is actually true history of, women that fought for the right to vote and a woman becoming vice president. That is actual fact. And so I'm working on that, and people can help financially make this a reality. Maybe the shorthand would be wabashartscorridor.org, and then from there you can click on the project. But there's a donate button for that. But I also have some work that's coming out in the future. I have a children's picture book coming out in January 2022, which is called Ida B. Wells' Voice of Truth. So this is for the little ones, the like 3 to 7-year-old kids.
Good.
Yeah, and so that's coming. I'm very excited about that. It's beautifully illustrated by Laura Freeman. So that's really exciting. I have another picture book that is currently being illustrated, which will come out in 2023, called You Dared, which is a tribute to over 100 Black women trailblazers. And that's also a children's picture book, which will be a celebration of just all of these women who came before us and have paved ways for all that we are right today. And there are a couple of other projects another children's book that's a little bit older for fifth grade. That's a sequel to this book that I wrote, that I co-wrote about a little boy. This one will be him visiting monuments and learning about who the people were. So I have a couple of other projects that are in the works, geared towards a younger generation, younger people, because I think it's important to introduce this information at a young age, so that they can see themselves and plant seeds. So as they grow older, they will seek out more information.
That's wonderful. Alelia?
So the project that I am working on right now is a biography of Madam Walker's daughter, Alelia Walker. So that's my, the almost finished biography that I've been working on for a long time, but it's almost finished. But I'm particularly interested in setting the record straight on her life. When I started writing about Madam Walker, I was dealing with the myths that other people were telling. And unlike Ida, she did not write her own autobiography, but fortunately left a lot of letters and documents that allowed me to tell the story. But I found that almost 99% of what I wrote was something that people didn't know or that people had gotten wrong. I'm finding the same thing with Alelia Walker, and the Netflix series did not help, because while Tiffany Haddish is very funny and very talented, I would have probably picked somebody different to play that role, and I would have written it very differently. Not with Alelia Walker as such a goofball, and I'm being triggered thinking about this right now, because because there's a scene where she's singing off key, which absolutely was 180 degrees different from reality. Alberta Hunter, the well-known blues singer who I met in the early 80s, told me, she went often to Alelia Walker's home, to her parties, and she said Alelia Walker had a great singing voice. So why that had to be turned into she couldn't sing, I have no idea. But what I'm finding in telling this story and doing the detail is that she was very much a central figure of the Harlem Renaissance. She knew the writers and artists and musicians and actors and socialites and professional people of the Harlem Renaissance. She was a major philanthropist and supporter, patron of the arts. And so I'm telling that story, and that she was involved in the early part of the business. So it's an opportunity to reframe another decade of history, of American history and women's history and African American history. I will just say, in the way that Michelle has already written books for younger readers, right, and is telling Ida's story with her quotations and on so many different fronts. You know, in addition to telling Madam Walker's story and A'Lelia Walker's story and the constellation of people with whom they interacted, I'm very much an advocate of people learning how to tell their own family stories. That
Mm.
it is, you know, I have benefited from being able to do research in multiple places across the United States to pull together the primary source material. But now, you know, in addition to Ancestry, which allows people to create their family trees, there's also newspapers.com and ProQuest and other places where they really can do a great deal of family research. And I always like to encourage people, as Michelle is saying, help young people understand, for those same young people as they're learning about historical figures, to do their own family. You know, now kids have iPhones or they have, you know,
Yeah.
smartphones. So every time they're on Zoom with an elder, or every time they're, you know, Thanksgiving is coming up, even if it's 10 minutes to begin to teach children how to ask those questions of their grandparents, of their great aunts and great uncles, of their uncles and aunts, of their great grandparents, if they're around, just get them to start learning how to say, tell me what it was like when you were a kid. And then to be able to keep that body of information so that they are beginning to tell their own family stories, because every family has somebody who made a way out of no way, somebody who kept the family together, somebody who was the leader in the family, and even those who weren't, but who made contributions. And I just think it's important to know yourself and to know your family and how they relate to the larger world.
I think that's awesome. And as we close out, I just want to say thank you to both of you women. It's ironic to me, you know, as we read our history, I often thought as a child, and I'm sure you two did too, did they know each other, our Black community, our community? Because we were very, I feel, intentional about what we did, and we were not worrying about colorism, and we weren't worrying about talking about each other. We were doing the work. So it's interesting that Michelle and A'Lelia, you have thanked me in my mind where the answer is yes, that at some point paths are crossed. And I'm glad that you are in that small group of descendants. And hopefully I can have a show within the next coming years to bring everybody back. But if anybody wanted to have any lasting comments or action, call to action, particularly you, Michelle, I want to encourage, that's about 3,000 people watching. I want to encourage everyone that's watching, particularly the Zoom on Michelle. I will be getting all her information and putting it on all of my social media, probably for a week. And I will follow up with Michelle if anyone is interested in trying to get this petition going and whatever else we can do to help. So Michelle, I would like you to close out with anything, pardon, that you want to say to this large audience, and I'm sure the rerun will be even higher. Please just share your heart and tell us how we can help.
Well, just to piggyback off of what A'Lelia said, obviously, you know, learning your family history is important, but also I think it's important to learn the history of your community, because a lot of our communities are on land, you know, that has a rich history, and we need to know, you know, about that whole history. But as far as, you know, a call to action, the most that we need for this mural to happen. And it's important because this will be the first large scale public artwork piece in the city of Chicago and the largest in the country to recognize suffragists and to elevate the visual, you know, representation of Black women. And so to me, this is very important, and we need to raise $35,000 in order to get this complete. So if you go to wabashartscorridor.org, and if you have any organizations that you are members of that it's almost at the end of the year, we can make tax deductible donations. And you know, this will, I think of it as a national project, even though it's here in Chicago. So please do what you can to make this a reality.
Well, on behalf of Michelle and A'Lelia, I promise to get them out right at 4. They're busy women, as we know everyone is, and they have things to do. I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for the Bella Biz Unplugged. Ladies, please take care. Michelle, we will be in touch, and I will be getting something. We will put a dent in that $35,000. I promise you that.
All right.
Have a
Thank
wonderful
you.
afternoon and Godspeed to both of you.
Thank you very much. Really
Happy holiday,
appreciate it.
everybody.
Bye-bye.